From everyone here at Veterinary Innovation Podcast, we wish you and yours very happy holidays.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in the veterinary space every week. Ivan, why don't you go ahead and introduce today's guest?
Hi, my name is Ivan Zach, and I'm happy to introduce Aubrey Kumm, who we got an introduction actually during the podcast from Bruce. So today we're going to talk about artificial intelligence in veterinary medicine. Aubrey is the CEO of Guava AI. He's a founder of GuavaVet, which is a recruiting technology, and he holds a degree of Master of Medical Sciences in Development Neuroscience from the University of Cape Town. He also holds a degree of Bachelor of Veterinary Sciences in Veterinary and Medicine from the University of Pretoria, was one of the first vets in Europe to be accredited by European School of Veterinary Postgraduate Studies with the General Practitioner Certificate in Endoscopy and Endosurgery, and recently had a terrible airport experience in Manchester. I want to hear about that before we jump into all that cool stuff. Aubrey, what happened?
Well, thanks for having me. I was actually in Manchester for the GuavaVet Innovation Summit, which is a veterinary innovation summit organized by the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons in the UK. And well, I was only there for a day because at that point I needed to be somewhere else early in the morning. But when I arrived at Manchester Airport, there were quite a number of queues and quite a number of people waiting for their bags at security. Now, the strange thing is that usually you'll see, one or two bags will be sequestered for further examination. But it was as if only a few bags were let through. And so I sat and I waited and I waited and I waited and, getting to about half an hour. And I just saw that more and more people were just waiting for their bags to have the secondary examination. And at some point, I just walked to the one guy who was, doing his work, and you don't want to interfere because it's, airport security is very important. And I just said, surely something must be wrong, because if everywhere else there's not this problem, and at this airport, every other bag is actually being sequestered for secondary examination, isn't there something wrong with the system? I was obviously told to go sit down and wait. And the bad experience was that I had to run. Having been at the airport 2 hours before, I had to run to catch my plane. So that was it. I think I said something on Twitter about Manchester Airport.
So
and I had a very
terrible
experience there. Well, that's what happened.
All right.
But,
well, you did catch your flight.
Yes, in the end, I did catch my flight. One of the last people on board, having all these people rubbernecking as you walk past. But, that's one of those things.
Excellent. Well, you have quite a mixed experience, and I really would like to learn more about how do you get from veterinary sciences to the neuroscience, and then how do you mix the two in your current ventures?
So I had my own practice for about good on 12 years in the UK. So I'm born in South Africa, went to vet school in South Africa. I then went to the UK in 2000, stayed. I thought I'd stay there for a year, ended up staying for 13. And I thought, look, this was great. And I did everything I wanted to. Now it's time for something else. And I've always been very interested in the brain and how the mind specifically works. And that's where the interest came in neuroscience. And it took me about a year to get involved in a program that I was really interested in. And that's how I ended up at the University of Cape Town, specifically in the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. And my master's thesis was on an app called Autism and Beyond, which we developed in collaboration with Duke University. And basically what this app was for was to enable people at home to screen their children for autism, and to be able to do so no matter where they are using their mobile phone. So we tested it on the Apple iPhone because, Apple was part of this project. But that's how I got into so I've always liked technology. I did the ophthalmology course as well with the postgraduate studies in Europe, and also the endoscopy and endosurgery. And there's a theme there. And the theme is to see things better. What you need, especially when you get to middle age, like where I am now, is illumination and magnification. And that's been my theme. There must be an easier way to do things, because if we can find an easier and a more effective way to do things, we'll save time. And if we save our own time, it means that we have more time with our clients and our patients to do something only we can do, and that's the human contact. And if you consider the autism on the continent of Africa, for example, there are 500 million children or young people under the age of 18. 1 in 100 of them, say, or between 1 in 60 and 1 in 100 will be on the autism spectrum, but there are only 50 child and adolescent psychiatrists and or psychologists on the continent of Africa. No matter how we try, we will never ever be able to produce enough specialist people to deal and to help all these families who live with autism on this continent. So what do? You need to find a way to scale up and scale out. And this is where the app came in. So what we can do is we can have these people in the first instance at least screen for the risk for autism at home, and then using their phones as well, provide them with next steps, because ethically it would be completely wrong ethically to say, look, there's a risk of your child having autism, but that's all we can do. No, what we need to do is no matter where you are, we'll tell you that there's a risk, but these are the next steps that you can take. So not only do you scale out, in other words, more people in one area, but you scale up as well, in other words, more people in different areas and even in different professions. So that is how I got into from veterinary medicine to neuroscience to app development and artificial intelligence, and how that can help us with, basically providing services to people.
Wow. So that's fascinating. So, this is really close to my experience in transitioning from vet medicine to developing a technology, and everybody has their path into it. And, a lot of people come up with great ideas, and then I'm sure, well, I don't know with your sophistication, but I don't know if you heard it from your colleagues. I heard a lot with my previous project, SmartFlow. I thought about that and I wanted to do it. And then I don't know if you ever heard anything like that, but what does it take people to move from, I had this great idea, to actually move forward and step into unknown, to change the status quo, or to develop a technology when your background is in veterinary medicine, neuroscience, and then now you're developing a technology. So how the transition happens? How do you actually move towards that next step and say, okay, now we need the technology, so let's incorporate it into my master's and everything I learned there? What was that journey for you?
Firstly, I know what I can do and what I'm good at. And I know where I will need to go, or that I will need help with other things. So I don't code. That's not what I do. Nor do I want to learn to code now. But what I like is I come up with the idea. When I have the idea, I have a group of people, friends and family and people with more or less the same interests. And then we start talking about this idea. The GuavaVet, for example. So I was on a flight back from, I think it was San Francisco. Well, it was from the US, and I was at a conference for it was an autism conference. And on the way back, I had this idea of, if I develop my own app, and it would be to get to connect people, and I want to first try it in veterinary medicine, what would it be? And, I didn't come up with the idea on the flight, but then back home in South Africa with friends on a farm, and it was, I was jet lagged and I didn't sleep all night, and I woke up, well, I was still awake at 5 o'clock in the morning. When I heard the other people were awake, I ran out and said, look, I've got an idea. It is like Tinder for vets. Firstly, they didn't know what Tinder is. I said, look, it's matching people with similar interests to form a relationship. So the question was, are you going to get vets dating? No. There are people who want jobs, but they want jobs in a specific place and a specific type of practice. And then there are people, the practice owners, who advertise. And if you want to go and look, if you go and look for jobs at the moment on the veterinary, out there, it's like trying to drink from a fire hose. The information is all over the place, and you have to go and look at a lot of different situations. And this is my idea. So I ran the idea past them. And, we started talking. They liked the idea. Then I started researching and looking whether or not there was anything else. And this is a very similar story, I think, that I heard on one of your previous podcasts. That's what you do. You can see, is something similar to this out there somewhere? And if it is, oh, good. That doesn't mean you need to stop. It just means, can I improve on this? Is there something that I can do better? And then once you've got that idea and you've got the base, then you start talking to the developers, if that is your next step. And that is a very, very important thing, is to find the right developer. Now, a developer that just says yes is probably not the best developer. My developers challenge me all the time, and that is what's so exciting. We've got this thing we do where whenever we add new iterations to the GuavaVet platform, is we give it stars. So we started with If I go back to recruitment, what does a one-star recruitment platform look like? Well, that would be the ads you would find in the newspaper. And then we worked up to about 11, 12, 13, 15 stars, even as where we now see the future. We're probably at around 7 or 8 of that. So that's what you do. You discuss with people, you find the correct people that can do the things that you can't do. I surround myself with people that are much more clever than I am when it comes to these things. I've got the easy job. I think of the ideas.
Wow. This is pretty much how I look at the development, because none of the things that I've built are something that I could have built. And the last company, the developers like to remind me of that, because in the brainstorm sessions, I remember I said to someone, I said, you remember when we built this feature? And how a chief developer corrected me, and he said, excuse me, you didn't develop any features. I said, you're actually right. I thought of them. You guys developed it. Thank you. So
awesome.
So I always remember that I'm careful. And now in our meetings, I'm saying, you remember when you guys made this? So that's an important correction there. That's fascinating. So one, I think I want to kind of dive a little deeper, and I don't know what's your experience looked like. It all sounds so good when an entrepreneur says, oh, I had this idea and I found these people that are specialists in this. But then how does actually the journey look like? How does one physically go? We talked to Stacey Santi. She is a veterinarian. She built an app, and then she went out and how did you find them? Or did you have the connections? Or did you have friends that coded? Did you have funds? Did you have to raise capital? What is that story like?
Oh my goodness. Look, I think if I tell the story, nobody would want to do what we do. Firstly, no. At this moment in time, funding is friends, fools, and family, as they would say. So most of it is myself and one of my very good friends and colleagues, who is also a veterinarian, a specialist veterinarian with regards to animal reproduction. And we basically, I first started and I said, look, do you want to be part of this? And yes, this is the funds we need. Let's start with this. But initially, it's self-funded. Then you get the idea and you start developing whatever this technology is that you developed. In my case, it was the app. And, at some point, it was disastrous because the initial developers that I used were keen on me just adding features. Whereas the guys that I'm with now are so much more professional, and it's a team, and they really guide me, and that's not easy to get to. It was by chance that I got these guys, and I mean I did what everybody else would. You should start with Google, and I started with Google, and I looked at ratings, and I looked at the area where I wanted to be. I looked at costs, and because too cheap is not good, but too expensive I simply can't afford. So it was a very long process to get to these guys. And then also during development, when suddenly you realize actually what happened is Apple changed their rules. And I was ready to launch at London Vet Show. This was 2017, 2018. And a month prior to launch, these guys rang. Well, I saw something was wrong because, I asked for stuff to be ready for London Vet Show and it just didn't happen. And then I got this email, not even a call, an email saying, look, we're so sorry that your dream is shattered, so is ours, because Apple changed their rules, blah, 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 your app can't work. Simple. I don't understand. I specifically asked for you to develop a native app. In other words, from scratch, we write the code. And that's what we started with. Where are we now? So thank goodness the guys that I use now was sort of, part of the original project, and they separated them, and I could continue with them. And that's why we have this brilliant relationship now. But it was very easy. And I think I probably aged 10 years in 10 hours when I got that news, because you're ready to launch, it's 2 months or a month or so away. And these guys just say, look, your app is not going to happen. And you say, well, what happened with the previous code? Where is that? It couldn't just disappear. So no, that is definitely not an easy step. And then the next thing is funding. You get to a point where the money just, how do you bankrupt yourself? Well, it's slowly and then suddenly, that's how it works. So you need to be careful all the time to make sure that there is funds, because it's an iterative process. There's always something new or something else or something better that you need to do. And are there rules? You can read all the books, which I have, the Lean Startup and the Hot Seat, CEO, and all these books, and they give you an idea. But most of these books I read after I made the mistake and say, oh yes, they also made that mistake, or there's the advice I needed beforehand. So I think the first thing to do is, if you have the idea, start reading soon. Do your research. Speak to clients of these developers who've had technology developed. If it's a native app you want, then obviously it depends on that is a different type of developer who simply will use a plug and play model for you, where they've already developed something which you can just adapt for your own use. It's a long and a hard road, and it's like anything else. When I started my career as a veterinarian, I'd locumed for about a year, and I never had anybody working with me, because that was in the days of foot and mouth in the United Kingdom. And then I, was only 2 years qualified, and I had my own practice with a friend of mine who we partnered up, and we had to learn the hard way. I never worked for anybody as a boss, and I had to learn how to be one. It's one of those things, you jump and you learn to fly on the way down.
So funny. I totally know what you mean. I want to direct us a little bit towards this artificial intelligence area of your business. These episodes are so short, and I want to get into the meat and potatoes of how you've leveraged AI, because as a technologist my entire life, I love the way that I've heard of AI kind of referred to. And me and Ivan were with a couple of guys from Google a couple months back, and he worked for one of the largest AI companies in the world. And, our AI conversation centered around, spreadsheets and PowerPoint. And I'd like to kind of understand how you're leveraging it in the software that you guys are developing.
Firstly, do we talk about artificial or augmented intelligence?
Yeah. So, you take us in either direction or both.
Okay. Or define it for us, please, because I don't think we're certain about that.
We need more intelligence. That's the one thing that we are certain of.
Right. I would say, my understanding at least is that artificial intelligence, if you take artificial versus augmented intelligence, is that artificial intelligence is almost seen as replacing human intelligence, whereas augmented intelligence is more of a collaborative process. In other words, I learn, the machine learn, and we both benefit from this rather than being replaced. So what we are doing now with the GuavaVet platform is, like with any intelligence that you build, you need data. As we collect data, which is how you build artificial, or how you build augmented artificial intelligence, it's to do with deep learning. The more data you get, you have an algorithm, you can start developing a technology that helps whoever it is that you need to help. So in this case, a practice owner needs to find somebody to come and work for them to do a specific job, and a job seeker wants to go and work in a specific place doing a specific type of job. And what we are doing is we are saying, right, if we collect all the data, so for example, where the people are, how far they would like to travel, in your job advert that you have on our platform, which is words, a little description and an image, for example, image of the practice or the people at the practice, we say, take a photograph, and this photograph needs to, in a very obvious way, try and show your practice culture. So what we can do now is we can collect data and we can say, okay, well, people in this area tend to want to travel only this far. This is the amount of money that they would like to receive for the job that they are going to do. The average salary in the area is this, and this is the type of job they want to do. They don't want to work out of hours. They don't want to work by themselves. They do want extra support. And if they look at the photograph, what type of photograph pulled them out? What was the hook? If you take a photograph of the building versus a photograph of a dog versus the photograph of people having fun, you can see the community inside the practice or the culture inside the practice. What is that makes it better? So the idea is then, as we collect all this data and we analyze this data, that as somebody completes all the fields to post a job advert, that there will be help that will say, look, if you do this is probably how long it's going to take, or this is what you want, this is what you've selected in this area, but if you do this will improve the chances of finding this match, finding this person. And then basically to create this one platform where people can meet each other and made easier by using all the data out there to, from the outset, connect people, and that would improve or at least start with a better fit. In other words, that the relationship between the employer and the person coming to work there starts on a better footing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But to me, that's just a fancy filter in a spreadsheet. Yes, it's a function of a website. And this is my issue, and I apologize in advance, of course. But this is how I look at artificial intelligence and the state of machine learning. We're just creating fancy algorithms or fancy filters. I don't think we're actually to the point where we're actually having intelligence that learns on top of itself, that makes advances. And I'd like to get you to comment on that.
Absolutely. That's where we are now. So now let's say, if you develop artificial intelligence, it means that you need more data. So now let's say, for example, you use our platform, and our platform can start connecting with the practice management software. So as time progresses and we get data from, a number of inputs, we can start predicting when you need the next person, when you need extra help. So now I'm going a couple of years ahead from where we are now. We're just at the data collecting phase. In the platform, in the app, we have 9 specific skills. So we've got 9 specific skills. So working up medicine cases, surgery, diagnostic imaging, and these, there are 9 separate ones. So we can also start learning. You can imagine that at some point we can start learning exactly what person you need. If we can see at this time you do more surgery, we could predict that you need more surgery. And there will be a point where we can say, hey Siri, I need a vet on Monday, moving to whatever the machine is, just knowing that you'll need a vet on Monday, not only that you need a vet on Monday, but also which type of vet you need, and the vet may just arrive. So that is where we are. So now I'm talking 15 star. So yes, we're definitely not, we've got a smart filter, but or algorithm, but what the algorithm is doing is now we're gathering data. And as we start gathering data, at some point we will be able to have this machine that will help you recruiting the best person. And this is very important, that the way we work now is somebody comes and works, and you've got a contingent of staff that work for you on a permanent basis. Well, that is not how the economy is going to work forever. There will come a time where people will want to work, an hour here, 2 hours there. The gig economy. There's no reason for us to believe that the gig economy will not be part of the veterinary profession as well.
I think you're totally right. And, another area that I'd like to kind of interject there is, I heard within the last year that for the first time in the history of the world, data has now surpassed oil in value. And I think you've really built an interesting point around artificial intelligence and the state of it today. And the state of it today is we're collecting data to solve tomorrow's problems. Would that make sense to you?
Yes. Well, I would say that we're collecting data to solve problems that we don't even know we have yet. And that is absolutely true. Yes.
I wanted to wish all of our listeners a very happy holidays. It's hard to believe that we've been on the internet doing this podcast for the last 6 months, and it's been a pleasure to connect with all of you. Thanks for listening, and happy holidays.